Welcome back, everybody. This is Tucker. Let's talk weather. The severe weather threat is back. I'm going to talk about where threats like tornadoes are most likely over the next 5 days. And is that spring in the air? I have the latest on our changing weather pattern and where you'll really need those allergy meds over the next week. Good to see you all here again. Hopefully you've enjoyed the warm weather, the quiet weather, although we know that quiet stuff is quickly coming to an end here. In this video, I'm going to give you a deep dive on the severe weather threat. I'm going to give you my thoughts on what I'm seeing in the forecast, and we're going to get you ready for a busy week ahead. In addition to severe weather, we are seeing spring trees really begin to pop, and it's actually coming a bit early this year. So after the severe weather update, we're going to give you an update on that. I want to show you this too, though. I took this picture out here in Boston. We're early to see trees like this, and I'll talk about where else it's early for you and where we're going next, because spring is just getting started. We're going to take you now straight to our severe weather outlooks, and this is the outlook starting on Thursday. This, of course, would be the 17th, and our threat on Thursday is going to be for tornadoes, wind, but especially hail. And you're seeing this level 2 threat out here centered around the Iowa area, but it extends into northern Missouri, southern Minnesota, as well as eastern Nebraska. The large hail threat, like I said, the biggest concern here, and this is going to be more so late afternoon through early evening. And I will give you a look at timing after we go through these outlooks, by the way. What I will mention too, though, again, is that this is going to be more scattered. So a decent number of people will see will see storms. It's just a matter of how many will be severe. And again, hail is the biggest threat, but there is a low tornado threat and damaging wind risk as well. We see this threat become much more broad as we head into Friday. Again, you see this level 2 risk out here. You know, personally, from everything I've seen, I wouldn't be shocked if we end up seeing a level 3 risk get extended into this area here. And I wouldn't be surprised if our level 2 risk gets just generally extended out this way a little bit more. It looks like there may be some storms that fire up ahead of the main line. And I just believe that area in central Missouri through northeastern Oklahoma is where we're going to have the best ingredients for severe weather, which I'll also show you coming up here. But this will primarily be, again, a wind and hail threat. There is a tornado risk, but it's actually on the low, medium end at highest. The greatest risk for hail will be on the southern end of this. And even the northern end, actually, there's a decent threat for hail. If there are going to be tornadoes, it's pretty uniform chance, a low to medium chance across the entire area. Then we move this into Saturday, and you see this threat continue to sag a little bit farther south. This brings up some flooding concerns too, because a lot of places are going to see heavy rain. But once again, I do expect this is largely going to be a wind and hail threat, especially on the northern end of this. Although I will say the tornado risk does tick up, especially as we look a bit farther south towards Texas and Oklahoma on this day. So this level 2 threat, wouldn't be surprised if it gets upgraded to level 3, but even if it doesn't, we still have a risk on Sunday. This is now Easter, and this is where I do expect to see an upgrade from level 2 to level 3. I feel most confident in this as a severe weather day right now, and I do feel more confident that this will at least be a medium tornado threat. This will be the highest tornado risk of the next several days here. There is still a chance for damaging wind and hail, but the tornado threat to me just looks a bit bigger on this day because we're going to have more spin in the atmosphere. And again, I'll show you all of this in just a moment. One more thing to mention, we also have a critical wildfire risk. This is on Thursday. I'm not going to spend too much time on it here, but that area shaded in pink in New Mexico, that's a big deal. We see some pretty serious fire damage and outbreaks when you have that critical risk. So this is something to take seriously on Thursday, and it does extend, at least the critical risk extends into Colorado and Kansas and Texas as well. By the way, I meant to say extreme risk, that pink area, but all the same, this is going to be a high fire risk on Thursday, and the same area will be facing risks looking forward too. So the reason we're seeing severe weather here is largely because of the jet stream, which injects a lot of wind energy into our environment, and that's how we are able to generate severe storms to begin with. And what you're seeing here is actually, I want you to look at this piece here, our subtropical jet jetting north across the U.S. That's going to help to lift some instability, some energy farther northwards, but it's this area here towards the end of these jets that we have the most favorable dynamics. Wind begins to spread out in the upper atmosphere. It helps storms rise into the sky, and it injects that energy into them. So that's what we're looking at for Thursday. You're going to see this jet. It's not a fast mover. So on Friday, it's still spread out across a good portion of the country. You can see pretty clearly here Friday. Again, we have a very broad exit region, as we call it, the very edge of it. That's why we have that more broad severe weather risk. And heading into Saturday, you'll see once again the jet, like I said, a slow mover. And on Saturday, we still have a pretty broad exit region here, though it's a little bit farther south and east, which is, of course, corresponding with our severe threat. And there is a bit more wind energy in there, but there's less instability, which I'll show you in a second. I want to show you Sunday here too, and if you look closely, you can see this extra guy right here on the back side of this. That's going to be our player on Sunday, so it kind of like latches onto the back of our subtropical jet, but you'll see here, it is a totally separate system. It's more compact. You have this much smaller jet streak. That area shaded in red is narrower, but even though it's more compact, this is part of the reason I have a feeling it'll be a higher severe weather risk. There's just more energy being injected into the system. Now, in terms of instability, because we need wind energy and instability to create severe weather, you'll see there is going to be plentiful instability, and here we are starting on your Thursday. As we get into the evening, that extends pretty far north, which is why we even have a severe weather threat at all here. The reason we don't have severe storms down here is because there's a cap. So storms can't bust through that. There's energy, but the storms, they get trapped. Now, as we head into Friday, you'll see again a lot of energy spreading pretty far northwards. That's helping to fuel our more broad severe weather threat. On Saturday, once again, it's a pretty broad area of instability extending into the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area, all the way from southern Texas. So again, plenty of instability for severe weather this day as well. And then on Sunday, you'll see it is a more narrow area where we have the potential for storms. Not as much instability out there, but you can see basically in this plume here, that corresponds very well with the jet and that severe weather outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. And again, this, I would be surprised if it is not a level 3 risk. Could even see the potential that it goes to level 4, but we'll have to wait a little bit more and get more data on that. And just to give you a sneak peek ahead of time, you can see we still have a lot of instability to work with in the following week. Our warm sector gets pretty broad, and that'll be certainly something to watch for more severe weather threats across the country and a bit farther north as well. Hey, by the way, if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do so. You'll always get my genuine thoughts on the forecast. I'll keep you one step ahead of the storms, and if you have any questions, I will answer all of them for you guys in the comments. And now on to the timing of these storms. Here's our system beginning to develop on Thursday morning. You're seeing some storms perhaps out here near Missouri. Those won't be severe, but there could be some precip out there. Heading into your Thursday evening, and again, we're talking here evening, late afternoon at the earliest. There are storms popping up in our area of interest across Iowa into southern Minnesota. There may be some storms in Wisconsin, but I don't expect they'd be severe. Some snow in the Rocky Mountains, by the way, as well, just to mention that. You'll see as we head into Friday now, we don't really get storms to fire up here, even though there's the instability because it's just, like I said, going to be capped off. But there will be a lot of wind. Anytime you see those black lines, those isobars, as we call them, packed tightly together, that's windiness. So a lot of the country will be windy on Thursday and Friday and even Saturday as well. But here we are as we head into Friday. This is now the mid-afternoon, late afternoon. We're still not seeing many storms pop up. And again, that's because we have a cap. But that cap will burst late in the day, closer to late afternoon, even early evening. And you can see pretty clearly here. For a lot of the country, this is around 7 o'clock in the evening, for Central Time at least. And that's where our storms begin to burst along a cold front. So close to sunsets when we get the activity going, and you'll see this continues for a good portion of the overnight. I'll mention too, Michigan, there may be some storms Friday morning, but the severe weather threat will be in the evening on Friday. So our risk will be out here. That'll be more broad and widespread. Down here, storms may be a bit more isolated. They'll be firing off a dry line in Texas, which means less storms, but what does form is more likely to be severe. So it's kind of a trade-off. Less coverage, higher potential. As we go into Saturday, you'll see not a ton of activity here, but there is still a chance for severe weather with this cluster of storms getting into Ohio and Pennsylvania. And of course, we have our main area here, which kind of sits in the same spot. That's why I'm a little concerned about flooding on Saturday. Then heading into Sunday, you're going to see this system really rocket together. It's going to form right around here. And you're going to see storms start to move northward. So here it goes. You can see it right over Oklahoma. As this thing gets going, this is Sunday morning, so your Easter Sunday morning. But once we get to the early afternoon, it's actually this little tail here that I'm most interested in for severe weather potential. A lot of the stuff, actually all of the stuff you're seeing up here, that northern portion is not going to be severe. There will not be instability. It's the southern portion here where I do see at least a concerning potential for tornadoes. I don't want to call it a tornado outbreak yet, but there is some potential for that, at least some. I'm not saying it'll be high end, but the possibility's there. And that's what we'll be watching as we head through the afternoon as well, as these storms continue to spread north and eastwards, extending from the Gulf Coast near Texas and Louisiana, as far north as Indiana, in fact. Although we'll have to wait and see how much instability this is able to pull northwards, because there is some question marks around that. Less instability north, less severe weather threat. And of course, this will luckily be a one and done type of thing, although I could see the potential for a low severe weather risk in the southeast on Monday as well. So that's your timing on these severe storms. If you're in one of these areas that may be impacted by severe weather, just make sure you know where to go to stay safe. And that would be the lowest floor of the building you're in an interior room. You don't want exterior walls near you. And always make sure you have a way to get warnings too. Now let's talk spring, and I want to show you this really cool map depicting where those trees are green. And this is from the National Phenology Network. Anywhere you're seeing these blue colorations, like in the south, that's where our spring bloom, our trees at least, was a bit late. Any of these red colors indicate where it was a bit earlier. And you can see once we get to really the middle part of the country and farther north, that spring bloom has been early by as much as 2 or even closer to 3 weeks. I'll let it loop through one more time, but this is a big player, of course, indicator of your allergies and when allergy season has begun. So if you're in the deep south or right along the Gulf Coast, you know, some of that winter snow and cold weather limited how quickly things bloomed. And then we really began to see a burst as we got into April, and things have been warming pretty quickly across the north central U.S. Really, March actually was quite mild. Now, beyond just this map, I can also show you, the general update on where we are so far. Anywhere you're seeing coloration is where we've already seen those first leaves bloom. So it's really just portions of the northernmost U.S., northern Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, portions of the mountains in the northeastern U.S., North Dakota. Most of the country's seen their leaves bloom, though. Some of the mountains out west here also still have not yet. And in terms of where we are relative to normal, again, you can tell for portions of the south, this was a pretty rare type of late bloom. Although for most of the U.S., unless you were also in some places in the middle of the country here, like Iowa out through South Dakota, Nebraska, even portions of Illinois, that was a quite early bloom, one that you don't see every decade even. But outside of those two places, nothing's really abnormal. There's just certainly some earliness if you're in the north and a little more lateness if you're in the south with this bloom so far. Of course, this begs the question, where do we go from here? And what is it going to feel like the rest of April? And I'll give you an answer, but I'm going to tell you right off the bat, it's going to be a bit bumpy in the middle of the country because we have those storm systems. So while mid-March is going to be quite mild in the central U.S., that's going to shift very quickly by the time we reach this weekend. This is Easter, and you can see that warm air mass now firmly in the eastern U.S. and cooler air in the central U.S. As we continue to move this forward here, the signal's a little bit weaker for our air masses, which is normal given we're farther out. There's more uncertainty. But what does become clear is that it does appear that most of the U.S. will be warmer than average to end the month of April. I believe the eastern U.S. is one of the best candidates for that, as well as the Rocky Mountains region looks quite mild out there too. So as we get into next week, that's where I expect we're going to continue to see quite a bit of blooming. Allergies are going to get worse from here, and that's where temperatures certainly look to be the most mild. Now, we can also give you an idea of how the actual temperatures are going to play out at the ground, so we'll go through this quickly, just give you an overview. We're looking at Thursday highs, and you can see the potential for 90s up into southern Nebraska. That's just potential. We really could get up there, though. The Northeast stays a bit cooler. You're also a bit cooler across the Rocky Mountains to start things off here, but remember, this is just this week, and the pattern shifts a lot. As we head into Friday, that warm air, you can see it moves pretty quickly to the east. It'll be quite cold across the Rocky Mountains. That's why we're expecting snow out there. Then we get warm on the weekend, especially in the Northeast. I mean, Saturday, we could see 80s into New England, in fact. A lot of New England has not been that warm yet. As we head into Sunday, we're still pretty chilly across a good chunk of the central and western U.S. Going to be very warm for Easter across the southeast and even the East Coast. So if you got Easter plans, looks good out there if you're dry, that is. And then as we head into Tuesday and really across much of next week, you're going to see those red and brown colors, those 70s and 80s, even some 90s far south become a lot more broad. And that's what I was saying. The U.S. as a whole does look quite mild as we move into the, entire week next week and into the last several days of April. So a pattern that will certainly favor, like I said, a lot more blooming and a lot more of a spring-like feel. And that's it, guys. We're going to wrap it up there. So be sure to drop your questions in the comments. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to share it with friends if they're going to be impacted by severe weather or if they're just curious about allergies. And let me know where you're watching from too. I love to interact with you guys. And like I said, if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. I'll make sure to get back to you. And I'll also make sure I see you right here next time.